of Midnight Grappler Animals.
Is it episode 2? No, you're right. It is episode 2. Because guess what? I have no regrets. It's been 2 weeks since we recorded the last one, and I have to say I have no regrets. There are no other episodes except for the one we recorded 2 weeks ago. So let's go into this new one.
Unless the listeners are really, really fortunate, unless they get on the nice list.
Yeah, we'll be checking twice when that starts. So do you want to jump right into it, or?
Let's jump right in. Episode 2, Toku Tuesday.
Not to be confused with Taco Tuesday.
Toku Tuesday! Taco Tuesday!
So Toku Tuesday, we got at least three topics we'll be covering today. This is for hardcore toku heads like Lan and more casual toku heads like me. I'm gonna
who don't even know what Tokusatsu is in general.
Yeah, we'll go into that a little.
You know.
Yeah, and I'm gonna digress right here. By the way, we totally did not introduce ourselves last time, so I'm gonna rectify that. That is my one regret. Maybe not yours, but that's mine. So quick little intro. I'm Salt, aka Flash Movie Updates, and this is Lan.
This is me. I'm Lan. Is there anything else we need to introduce ourselves?
No, we did. I just wanted to show the bare minimum of decency.
Okay, cool. I mean, this is only episode 2, so
yeah, we're allowed to flub.
Before we start, I just want to say there's going to be a lot of Japanese names, and I know that for some people watching, there's like a specific way they might expect to say Japanese names, or for us to say Japanese names. But for the sake of just consistency, I'm just going to be doing the usual first name, last name thing rather than the last name, first name thing. Yeah, not really much else to say there.
And I'm going to be wildly inconsistent because I'm culturally insensitive.
Perfect. There's going to be a lot of cultural insensitivity here.
But no slurs.
No slurs. We've committed to no slurs. We're keeping in the flubs, but still no slurs.
Yeah, sorry slur heads, but congratulations flub heads.
Yeah, flub heads stay winning. Do you want to do the intro for our first piece on our agenda? We actually have notes this time.
Yeah, we actually have notes. So we're going to be covering 3 Tokusatsu and Tokusatsu adjacent properties. We'll be doing Ultraman. We will also do Radiant Black.
Now, before
those are both comics.
Now, before we move on, I know there's going to be a lot of contention about Radiant Black being Tokusatsu adjacent. We'll get into that.
Yeah, the word adjacent was doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
Yeah.
So we got Ultraman, we got Radiant Black, and we also got Kamen Rider, and we'll go into the specifics of each of those as we go. Do you want to talk about Tokusatsu as a principle and what makes all these Tokusatsu, primarily Ultraman and Kamen Rider?
Well, okay, so it's pretty much the primer for Tokusatsu. Tokusatsu is short for Tokusatsu, which is just special filming. It just refers to a style of filming that primarily relies on special effects, and just using like suits and practical effects. It's a genre that's been around for at least 100 decades, or 100 years, I should say. At this point, it's hard to pin down like an exact definition. Just like it's hard to pin down an exact definition for what a JRPG is, just because there's a lot that can be encompassed by Tokusatsu. And we'll get into that more with the Radiant Black stuff. But for the purpose of today's show, Tokusatsu is just going to be referring to anything that is inspired by or is directly a member of special effects suit filming.
Yeah, the only thing I think that's great. Yeah, I mean, like, I think one way to look at it culturally is when people say like a movie has a lot of special effects here, they're gonna be thinking explosions, they'll be thinking custom props, costumes, like anything of that nature. And typically people are thinking of that stuff in like the practical realm. If they mean CG, they'll mean CG.
Yeah.
And sometimes, yes, like you were saying, like Toku becomes like a shorthand for having the special costumes, the suits as you call them, and that's what we'll be doing today. So yeah, great explanation. Thank you, Lan.
So I guess we'll go right into our first one then, Ultraman, and specifically, we're talking about an Ultraman comic this time around, a one that came out in 2020, written by two people, Kyle Higgins and this is the part where you do the second one. Who's the second writer?
Oh, I had it, dude. I just wrote Groom. I'm gonna guess Matt.
Yeah, Matt Groom.
Matt. All right,
It's Matt
sick.
Groom. With art by Francesco Mana and colors by Espen Grunitjern. I probably butchered Espen's last name. I'm so sorry. But yeah, it came out in 2020 as Rise of Ultraman, which was a 5-issue miniseries, which was then followed by another 5-issue miniseries, Trials of the Ultraman, which was then followed by another 5-issue miniseries, Ultraman: The Mystery of Ultra 7, which is currently coming out.
So, Lan,
Yes, Salt.
my first note, what I want to talk about here is that this is a Marvel comic based on a Japanese live action TV show. What's up with that? I really don't know, and I would love to get the skinny on that.
Okay, see, I didn't have notes for this, but the primer of it is the people that make Ultraman, Tsuburaya, have been pretty good about global outreach compared to many other companies such as Toei, even Toho to some degree. But Tsuburaya has been pretty good, and a lot of that is just related to its sort of history with outreach, like working with Hanna-Barbera for an animated series back in the 80s. Again, I should have written notes on this part specifically. But they had a huge slew of trouble with a company called Chayo. And after that, they kind of needed all the sort of support they could get. So in the past decade or so, Subaru has been really, really proactive about sort of getting the Ultraman brand out to the rest of the world. So this is in the form of, like localizing the shows. Right now, shows are being simulcasted, or, simulcasted with a slight delay. The current season is Ultraman Decker.
Kinky, damn it! I'm gonna blow this door down!
This could be it. His daughter's birthday is Valentine's Day. And Valentine's Day is...
Just give me the code!
Which is a sort of reimagining, sort of sequel, sort of everything to a whole bunch of other Ultraman TV shows. Ultraman as a series debuted in 1966. Let's see, what else? So the Marvel connection is that the editor on this book, Rise of Ultraman, is one Tom Brevoort. Tom, when he's not being a walking encyclopedia for all things Marvel, he's actually a pretty big Tokusatsu nerd. And in many ways, it's actually more surprising that there was an Ultraman Marvel comic than before a Kamen Rider Marvel comic, just because of how huge a fan he is of Kamen Rider. So yeah, you have that connection, and that plus Tsuburaya's overall want to expand globally led to the creation of this comic, which came out in 2020.
That was a great explanation on the Marvel connection. I didn't know any of that.
Yeah, it was pure memory. There might be some things that might not be accurate about that, but I think that's a pretty general explanation as to like the why this exists.
You know, for Midnight Grappler animals, we're just always gonna play by the close enough rule. If you were saying it all in good faith, it's close enough to be true.
I don't know if it's always good faith when it comes to Tom Brevoort. But moving on.
Oh,
Rise of Ultraman, yeah. It is absolutely a book. It is one of the books of all time, I would say. Um I think for the purpose of this, I'll let you start
sick.
because
Yeah.
I
No,
want to
that works
get
because,
your sort
dear
of take
reader,
and
I
like what
am an Ultraman
experience
virgin.
you have with Ultraman before I go into
I
my
Yeah,
takes.
well, yeah, I know. I mean, I knew who he was. I really want to see Shin Ultraman because I loved Shin Godzilla.
Wow, an
But
Ultraman version?
other than that, I have not any real idea about him. This comic is
Mm,
Lance said this is this is one of the comics of all time. Um, I want to say something genuinely nice. This is a beautiful book. The art the
really
Yeah,
is.
and I really should start with the art. So, like we said, Francesco Manna. What I really like about Manna
Oh,
is he's
absolutely.
striking this nice
Absolutely.
balance of this anime influence, but he still feels well-rounded and grounded in these other influences. Like I'm seeing some Disney animation in here that's fun. The faces are super expressive.
And Bemular, and he actually captures like because again these were like really dinky old suits back in the 1966 show, and he perfectly captures, especially Bemular, the googly eyed look of Bemular. He captures it so well. Yeah, I mean, and the colors too, like uh Grundit Yearn's colors really help accentuate Mana's line art, especially in both maintaining a sort of animated, sort of slight manga influenced style. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, no, the colors I have a lot of stuff to say, but that's basically what I'm feeling. The colors, like they get really psychedelic at times, but like
mhm.
everything is reading really clear. Like these guys are delivering the story well. I would love to see these guys on some books with some other creative talents, if you catch my
Yeah,
drift.
yeah. I- we can, we can. Do you want to just head into that, or
I
so?
do, but I want to say one more thing.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
The About Mana, there's a bit where our hero's name is Shin. Is that correct?
Yes, Shin.
Okay, so Shin is in a hospital bed, and Shin gets out of the bed at one point after he hears some like really urgent news. And I feel like the script probably says that like he like gets out of bed or he leaps out of bed, if I want to be more charitable to the script. But he draws this dude straight up like vertically leaping out of the bed, and
Oh
like
yeah.
that's so fucking cool. That's what I love about comics. Like that's not even one of the monster pages. Like all the monster stuff,
Oh
all the
yeah, the
superhero
monster,
stuff.
the action is just fantastic. There's this one
It,
where he's growing and it's like a two-page spread,
yes, that
and it's
rocks.
conveyed so well.
Yeah, that stuff rocks. And I was mentioning this hospital bed scene because he keeps this dynamism even in like the more human stuff. So like I'd never seen Francesco Manna before. Like I really dig this dude.
Yeah, I really wish I could say the same about the writing. Um,
About the writing, go ahead.
yeah, okay, so first I should start with my experience with Ultraman. So prior to this year, I'd only watched the original series and like a couple episodes of other series. Since then, I've rewatched the original series and am in the process of watching Ultra 7 now, which is the sequel to the original series, as well as sort of dipping my toes into more modern stuff before I, you know, get there. So a lot of my reading experience for Rise of Ultraman was informed not only by that, but also Shin Ultraman, because Shin Ultraman, like this, is a reimagining of the original series. in a modern context. So maybe that might have colored my reading experience of this a bit more negative than it deserves, but yeah, those are the two frames of reference that I have. And the first major thing I need to say is that it's insane that the first Ultra and, Ultra host, as it's referred to in the series, but I haven't seen a single reference to it in this comic, is Dan Moriboshi and Ultra 7. And again, this is like something that will completely fly over the heads of new readers, but to people who've like experienced Ultraman, to like a non-insignificant degree, it's a pretty interesting way to start the reimagining of the original show by by bringing in the guy from the sequel series and then immediately shunting him off to wherever. And then there are other things like the fact that there is no SSSP. Like in the original series, the SSSP was the science squad that was sort of like the protagonists that Shin Hayata was a member of. And here we have something different. We have the USP. And the USP doesn't exist in any of the other shows, but it seems to be like a mix of the SSSP and the Ultra Guard from Ultra 7. So from the bat, right from the very beginning, we know that this is not going to be a one-to-one retelling of the original series, right? Not even like a 1-to-1.1. Another interesting thing I found was that it decided to split the story initially between two timelines, two time periods, I should say. One in 1966 and then one in 2020. And then it kind of just does nothing with that for the rest of the mini. And again, it was cool because the 1966 stuff is followed up in a backup from the first issue, which I thought was
that
good.
Michael Cho backup
The Michael
is so
Cho
beautiful,
backup,
man.
It's primo. And again, like an aside before we get into the actual writing of this book, the backups are actually pretty good when they're actually there. One backup is done by Michael Cho, the aforementioned 1966 story, and then we have a series of one-pagers by Gurihiro, which are basically like a very cute sort of like a comedy thing, like comparable to a 4-panel Yonkoma manga strip. And like it's pretty fun. And I really wish that they had just continued to do that instead of just cordoning off the first issue for that. So the backups, yeah, they're pretty good. I really wish there were more of them. And yeah, let's get into the writing of this book. Salt, I'm gonna let you be the driver for this, and I'm just gonna sort of help you along as you have your many
Please.
questions.
Yeah, jump in at any time. Sure.
Perfect.
I did not like the writing. I did not know what the hell was going on. And I can tell you, sometimes I don't know what the hell is going on because I'm just kind of dumb, or sometimes I don't know what's going on because it's just not good. It's not good, folks. Yeah, I think my biggest issue is this feels overly dependent on lore delivery. Like I said, I don't know the Ultraman franchise, but it's very much like, okay, you got to get to the USP. You got to get to this special gun that the fans recognized. Like,
The
there's
gun
these.
is not
He's like,
it's not really a thing in the series. The K-ray gun, yeah.
But it feels like it, right?
Oh,
like
and that's the
trying
thing.
to hit these.
It absolutely, like, again, with the Dan Moriboshi stuff and the Ultra 7 stuff, and
Right.
the second issue, you even get like glimpses of the other Ultra brothers, like Ace and Taro. Like these are all things that people who are familiar with the series will recognize, but to anyone reading it for the first time, it's pretty much just like straight over the head.
Yeah, no, and I can see through that. It's really transparent. Like,
Mm.
and I think that's my biggest issue is this is all really transparent. Like it all just started kind of sliding over me. Like when I am not feeling a comic, I revert to like a 6-year-old and I just start looking at the pictures. I did that about an issue and a half into this 5-issue mini. I straight up just stopped reading dialogue, dude. Like it was very Claremontian. Just like I need to fill this real estate with dialogue. And I have like one of the most egregious examples when Shin does his first transformation into Ultraman, beautiful splash, like fucking Mana and Grundetjern are cooking, and then like as soon as he like jumps into action and like starts wrangling a dinosaur, rather than letting this like powerful acrobatic superhero like just speak for itself in the image, Higgins and Groom have to add this dialogue over going, okay, wow, this is incredible. Like he's saying that he's like he has a thought bubble. Like it's very like Claremont Lee type behavior, you know?
It's very much like an American comics thing. And this is one thing I should note. One thing I should note is like with all the influence that it takes from the original series, the one thing it doesn't take is how quiet the original Shin Hayata and Ultraman are. Like Shin in the original series is not a very talkative man. He just kind of just like shows up, like when it's time to save the day. And, like he's a bit of a charmer, but he is nowhere near as talkative as the Shin in this comic.
Yeah, no, everyone's so fucking chatty in this book, man. It's just so it's weird because like a lot of comics written that way, it's like they're trying to kind of like fast pass themselves to like the Netflix adaptation, but like Netflix won't adapt something like this. There's already plenty of other adaptations, so
Well,
it
Netflix
just
already
makes
has
me
an
like
Ultraman anime too, which is
that's
adapted
my
from
point, right? Yeah, it's like why are you doing this, dude? Just let your art cook. Like, get out of the fucking way. I got only one more dialogue note, and that is on the term kaiju. Now, when you and I use the word kaiju, when fans use the word kaiju, I think it makes total sense. We're talking about a really specific context of creature, of fictional creature. Like, it makes sense to say creature in real world, or sorry, to say kaiju in the real world. When characters in universe use the word kaiju, it pisses me off, dude.
It's I don't know, it's weird because, like it's not like the characters are American, like they do at least stick to everyone being Japanese. So I'm of two minds that, like I'm not it's not the most egregious thing to me, but it becomes more egregious when you realize that this is two white guys writing this through the
I
through the
think
mouth of a
that's my
Japanese
issue.
character.
Yeah, it's like why aren't you calling like the fork like by the Japanese word or the car or shirt? Like why just this word? I don't know, it feels very I don't know, it's like
And
trying too
this is
hard to
like
be
a larger
cute
debate
or
in general. I
corporate. I
think
don't know.
it's a larger debate in general about, like the term kaiju. And this is
Yeah.
something that's been going on for decades, so I don't think we're gonna have any answers to that
No, it's fine. We don't need to
here,
dwell on it.
but I think it is a good point to make, just in regards to like it's like when we're saying tokusatsu, like what exactly does that mean? Like why aren't we just saying special filming or special effects filming?
As
Yeah,
the actual story, I guess yeah, I'll just start with the question here. So
go for it.
there's this moment that like feels kind of like out of a Firestorm comic for me, and I don't know whether this is Higgins and Groom doing this or this comes before, but like when Shin is in his human form, he's
Mhm.
got like Ultraman's like spirit next to him, like he sees him and hears him and no one else does. Like, is that what's up with that?
I it's like I can't begrudge it because and this is
No, I
sort of
don't even dislike it.
spoiling
I'm just curious
like
what's up.
oh yeah, I mean cuz the whole deal is that they share a body and mind. So I guess in the context of American comics they go for what's most um what's the word, mappable, and in this case, it maps to the relationship that Firestorm, the DC character, has, which is actually a really good map. Now that you mention it, I hadn't considered it prior, but it's a pretty good map. So I think that's how it's how they're accounting for the fact that these two sides are always in contact with each other. In terms of the shows themselves, it's only become a thing in some of the recent shows. But like in the original series, in the 1966 series, you don't see that interaction with Ultraman and Shin really at all. Like he talks to Shin, like when he's saving him. And as a side note, I think it's funny that they decided to flip the dynamic and have it be Shin saving Ultraman from death rather than Ultraman saving Shin from death in the original series. But going back to sort of the communication aspect, yes, Shin and Ultraman don't really like communicate in the original series. But obviously with them both being much more talkative in the comic, they sort of have to. So I think this is their way of sort of working around that.
Yeah, they spend like 90 pages just fucking talking
Oh yeah,
to each other. It's horrible.
I mean, this is again the reason why it's harder for me to begrudge this is because like in Shin Ultraman, and this is, I guess, like a semi-spoiler, not really a spoiler. Shin Ultraman, Ultraman and Shinji do talk to each other a lot through the movie. So like the method of communication, it's harder to
No, my
begrudge
issue is
because
not
I've seen it done and I've seen it done well.
Yeah.
So like
No, I don't mind that them talking to each other is fine. I think my issue is that like he fuses with Ultraman, right? And then like they spend like, I swear to God, it feels like
all of
2
issue 2
issues
is just them talking.
just like, how is this happening? Where did you come from? Why did you pick me? Like, I don't hate that as a device. It's just, dude, get it done in 2 pages. You don't need to spend a whole
is so
issue
interesting
on
to me. Because like for me,
interesting, yes.
For me, it's comparison between that and other like manga or comics of like tokusatsu properties. Like my 2 frames of reference for the pacing of this thing was the original Kamen Rider manga, which, and this isn't a plug, is available now as a huge fucking brick for $30. You can get it as a huge fucking brick. It's an omnibus of like the first 4 volumes. You should get it. It's a really, really good comic, and we'll get into that later. But how quickly, how quickly Hongo becomes Kamen Rider in that versus like how long it takes for Shin and Ultraman to like actually transform in this thing. It's, I don't know, it's weird. And maybe this is just something to do with American comics in general. And again, this is something that we'll probably talk about more in the Radiant Black section, is just like the pacing of American comics does not help this story much at all, I'd say. Just from like it being a monthly comic to like having to do all this within 5 issues, and then also splitting this story across multiple miniseries. It just lends itself to a lot of pacing issues.
Yeah, I mean, when I said these guys like talking to them, like these 2 talking to each other pisses me off. Like they can talk to each other, it's fine. It's just when they fuse and he's talking to him, it's like explaining to the reader the rules of this universe, which
rather than just
I
doing
feel
it.
rather than just doing it. Like that's the fun of like Toku stuff to me, is that it's just so madcap and unpredictable. And he's going off about like, I'm from this evolved universe, and these kaiju are going to be attacking your planet because your vibes are bad, dude. Like,
it's again, it's so funny just comparing this to the original show, where Like they don't need that context. You get the idea
I don't
that
need that
Ultraman support.
context.
Like you get this idea that Ultraman's just this like guy who corrals in monsters from outer space. You don't get any sort of like info about like what the Land of Light is, what their whole deal is. All you know is that this is a guy from the Land of Light. He's here to kick some monster ass. And also he has a timer. Speaking of which, that's one thing I do need to talk about is the way that they showcase the timer. So in the original series, Ultraman has like a limit to how long he can fight. This was just mainly for production purposes, but in the original show and pretty much every show since, this timer is shown through a little button-shaped light on his chest. Did you notice this button-shaped light on his chest in this comic?
Lan, I did not.
Well, it's there, which makes me more pissed because the way that they show his power depleting is through a generic 90, like
cutaway
a battery
panel.
Yeah, like it's a cutaway panel, and
yeah,
it's
that's
a lazy way of showing, like his power.
Yeah,
depleting.
no, that was a really interesting thing from a production standpoint. Is I really felt that the writing was getting in the way of the art at times because I didn't know about the chest thing, but that was a weird cutaway thing.
That's the thing. They don't explain
Right.
the chest thing, but they could have because, like in the show, like it turns red when his time is almost up. It starts blinking. They could have easily done that through the art where like his chest starts blinking.
If only
red.
comics was a visual medium,
Yeah, if only comics was a visual. Oh my god. And you could have had like a throwaway line being like, "Oh shit, my timer's almost up. We should get this done real quick."
Right. Yeah, that was really that was a good example of I felt like the writing was getting in the way of the art. I was like, I love this art, but I feel like it could go so much harder if this writers could properly communicate these ideas.
Yeah.
Is that a good segue to Radiant Black, or is there anything else you wanted to throw in?
There's only one other thing that I want to talk about, and that's like the presence of Dan Moriboshi in this and the overall sort of production of that whole thing. Because again, it's the first thing you see in the comic is, Dan Moriboshi encountering Ultra 7, who we don't know is Ultra 7, blah blah blah. And then sort of like building up this mystery as to like who he is, what his whole deal is. But then I realized that mystery doesn't actually get, followed up on properly until the mini that's coming out this year, which is 2 years after this came out. So that is a segue into my overall thoughts on how they're doing this, like as a series of 5-issue minis. And again, I think this is something that's a bit more endemic of the comics direct market industry in general, is just a lack of risk taking or just faith. Just because I feel like 5-issue minis are pretty easy in terms of production to bank on or to bet on even than it is to bank on, like one ongoing series. And again, from a production standpoint, it's also nice because it gives you a nice break between sort of these miniseries for the team to sort of recoup and get their shit together. I have no idea if the team got their shit together because I haven't read the other two yet. Maybe we might for a future episode. We'll see. But yeah, it leaves me wanting more because, if you're going to have this huge gap between these miniseries, you really got to leave it on something big, something that will actually get people coming back to the next miniseries. And in the case of Rise of Ultraman, and, if you haven't been spoiled already, you're going to be spoiled now. The big spoiler is that Dan Moriboshi is still alive. And, again, Saul, did you care about this?
Don't care.
don't care,
do
right?
not
Because
know.
you don't know. You don't know
care
who
at
he
all.
is. There's like
No.
3 lines about who Dan Moriboshi is, during all 5.
And I didn't
of these
read
issues.
those. I didn't read those, so I just assumed he's like Shin's uncle.
Eh. You're
It's
almost
just
there.
like, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's just
It's a
like,
pretty good guess.
I guess it's like this series. You know, I gotta say something nice. The art is killer. If you really like this Toku type stuff, like, yeah, you should check it out for the art. They
Oh
are
yeah, absolutely.
doing good stuff here. But as someone who doesn't know Ultraman or isn't sure about this, I would not recommend this as like a reader's first foray into the Ultraman universe.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is absolutely an Ultraman comic that is not only made for people who are familiar with Ultraman in general, but might just piss off people who are familiar with Ultraman in general.
Yeah, it like occupies that Venn diagram space of like something designed to annoy everyone.
Yeah, it's a little something for everyone. Just like this podcast, a little something for everyone. And who
There
knows,
you go.
we might end up pissing everyone too.
For all 5 of our listeners.
All 5 of our listeners, yes. All right, let's move on then. Let's talk about, because there is a segue between Rise of Ultraman and Radiant Black, and it is in the form of its writer, one Kyle Hagen. There's gonna be a lot of primers, I guess, in this episode, and the Kyle Hagen's primer is that he is like the most American comics writer that American comics writers can get. He is like the bar, and I'm not saying this is a high bar. I'm not saying this is a low bar. He is like and again, I say this with peace and love, the most bog standard comics writer in the industry. You know, like you come in, you read his comics, you go, yeah, that is a comic. That is a superhero comic. Absolutely. And then you go on with your day. You know, he doesn't write anything that's like particularly egregiously bad, but he doesn't necessarily write much that's particularly non-egregiously good.
Yeah, it's kind of like the streaming effect, but for comics, like a lot of streaming shows just kind of like wash over you. Like you experience it, but like you can't really recall specific details. Like that's how I feel anytime I'm reading his dialogue or like trying to understand a story point. It's just it all feels so thin.
And I will say, I have liked his work in the past, particularly with the Power Ranger stuff that he did for a while. I quite like that, and also like some disparate things, during his time at Marvel and DC. Like there was that one Winter Soldier mini that he did, which I thought was quite nice. But again, he had some great. Again, the other thing is, Kyle Higgins gets paired up with a lot of good artists. Like he got paired up with Rod Reyes for that Winter Soldier comic, and now he's getting paired up with Mana for the Ultraman stuff. He's had some great luck with artists, and I think that's something that is hopefully nice. And again, I think he's a nice guy. Like from the very little I've seen of his like online presence, it's not like he's an asshole or anything. But Radiant Black. I have history with this, and this segment is going to be more about that than it is about the actual book itself. Just because Radiant Black occupies this really weird space in American comics, and I guess things that are inspired by Tokusatsu. So a little bit more on the Kyle Higgins primer. Between 2016 and 2018, he was in charge of writing the Power Rangers comics reboot for Boom Comics. So this was like the first, 30 issues of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers comic. And this was sort of like a revival of the 1993 show set in the modern day. Again, he seems to have a penchant for doing revivals of old things in the modern day. And yeah, so in 2018, he had a big Power Rangers comic event called Shattered Grid. That was a rousing success for Boom, and then shortly after that, he sort of handed off the reins of the comic to Ryan Parrott, who we'll mention later, but Ryan Parrott, and then he went on to do, among other things, the Rise of Ultraman comic, which came out in 2020, and then 2021 he announces a new comic that he's doing, which is Toku-influenced, and the word Toku-influenced is a bit. Well, the word Toku-influenced is where like this whole thing starts. But I think I should do a bit more primer because, lo and behold, reader, Salt is answering the door. So what are some other things I can say about Radiant Black? Well, it is currently at, I think, 18 issues. Again, this is one of those things that I did not take huge notes on because I was more focused on the next segment. But yeah, it's on its 18th issue, I think, maybe 19th. And it is now a part of a huge shared universe. Flash or Salt, are you back yet?
Yeah, I'm back.
Oh, thank God. Oh, Jesus Christ. Holy crap. I don't know
I
how
can
much
chime
longer I could've
in.
done that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
okay,
good.
cool.
You catch your breath. I got some
okay,
things
so
I want to add in here.
go ahead.
Yeah, this Toku influence style, like this is a good sort of sort of umbrella, or like this kind of acts as the linchpin of like my issue with this dude's writing. Like, I'm not trying to pile on this guy. I'm sure he's got some good works. I really just see any sort of genre writer, like, unless you're exceptionally talented or bringing something exceptionally different to the table, when you work too much as a fan of a thing, it gets tired quickly, right? Like it does if it's Toku, if it's superheroes, if it's
The
science fiction. I
influences
mean,
are there, but like the quality is struggling to keep up.
yeah, and so like my issue with this is like I open it and like there's nothing that's really grabbing me. Like the design of Radiant Black himself feels half baked. It's like he looks like high tech Spider-Man, and I've seen that 1,000 times. The protagonist is supposed to be like, again, it's kind of a Peter Parker, but he's like kind of fuck up Peter Parker. But it's like, dude, like if you're doing this like Toku inspired thing, like, and you want to do this kind of fuck up Peter Parker guy, like make him way more fucked up. Give this guy like a drug problem. Like let's see him like getting cut
Yeah, let's
by
see him
like
do some hard.
his
Let's see
work
him do
nemesis.
ketamine.
Yeah,
Let's see
man.
him do ketamine.
My guy is just like financially irresponsible, and they even reference to the fact that he can get bailed out by his parents. Like,
That's I think that's
I
what
hate that.
that's what pisses me off. Is like that's not relatable. That's you're trying to
No.
make him this like relatable writer kind of guy, but he's getting bailed out for like
Yeah.
what, $40,000?
Oh,
Like
and he's a
who
writer.
how?
Like, god damn
Yeah,
it,
he's a
dude. God damn
not
it.
just a writer, a novelist. A
Yeah, I
novelist.
don't want. It's like it's so fucking annoying when like you're a writer and you're like trying to write about superheroes and you've got this like fan complex thing, but what if my hero is also a writer? Like that's just bad, man.
Right, so now that I've caught my breath a bit. Now that I got my breath a bit, let's talk a bit about the lead up to the release of this thing. Because again, not only did it claim to be influenced by Tokusatsu, another big influence was Invincible. Comic
Oh, I
series
see
turned,
that.
yeah. Which I found is interesting because I think that's the only influence it really has on it. And it's weird. It's so weird. Because okay, so I will be 100% transparent here. I have interviewed members of the creative team, namely the editor of Radiant Black, about Radiant Black up to its release. And so I really got to pick sort of his mind and also Higgins's mind by proxy as to like their approach to this book. This was back when I was actually doing, you know, like comics crit stuff. Can we add a like a retch sound effect there?
That was really good, man. Like it's gonna be hard to find one that's actually better than that.
Okay, well, we don't have to do it then. Anyways, I got to pick their brains, and the thing is, yeah, you're right. They're absolutely fans. They're like, they're fans to, I don't want to say like an absolutely detrimental degree, but I think it sort of colors their approach in a way that is, it's transparent in a way that annoys me, I guess.
Sure.
Like, I don't know what kind of editorial pull they had to get, you know, like coverage from IO9 and specifically Toku Nation. Toku Nation's covering of this was really what sort of made me go, huh? Because, you know, like obviously Toku Nation, it's an American, I don't want to call it a publication, but it's a site. And you know, they don't really do anything else on the American side other than like Power Rangers. Just so to see them covering this like indie comic that would be coming out like in a few months, you know, and sort of like painting it as this like Toku influenced superhero comes to Image Comics. It really got the gears starting to turn in my head about like what it means to be Toku influenced and sort of like, does Radiant Black deserve to call itself Toku inspired? And before I get into that, I think we should talk about sort of the release of it, because again, it's just a regular ass comic. It's an ongoing comic. It's been ongoing since 2021. And in true American comics fashion, it has now expanded into a yearly crossover event and a whole shared universe. Currently, the entries into this universe, and this is one of the notes that I did actually manage to take, are Inferno Girl Red, which will be coming out next January, Radiant Pink, Radiant Red, which are both spin-offs of Radiant Black. Again, if the reader or the viewer was not privy enough to know that already. And then we have two other series, Rogue Sun and Dead Lucky, which have both started now. I read Rogue Sun a bit. I have not read Dead Lucky yet. I have thoughts on Rogue Sun. They're not very nice ones. It's so like at this point, you know, like it's about 2 years into its life, and it's sort of just kind of settled into this identity as just another American superhero comic. Which is again what I mean when I say it carries that Invincible influence way more than it does any modicum of a Toku influence. And so yeah, let's talk about. Let's start with the design. Do you like the design of Radiant Black? Because I don't think it's bad per se. I don't think it is bad
I do.
per se. You think it's bad?
I think it's a good rough sketch. There's like design principles here that I am not feeling, honestly.
So speaking of design principles, and that's the one big thing I wanted to tackle, is the mask specifically.
Yeah.
And so Shotaro Ishinomori, who we will again speak, I say this a lot, but we will get to that later. Shotaro Ishinomori, when he made Himitsu Sentai Go Ranger, you know, like the first Super Sentai series, you know, his design philosophy for the masks of the 5 members of the team was to make it distinct enough that even if you were colorblind, you could still tell which one was which, just because of the design of their visors, sort of like the designs of their torsos, everything was sort of supposed to do that because again, he was making this for manga. Manga is black and white. You're not going to see color there. So he had that sort of distinction there. And I don't think that foresight was applied to, because spoiler alert, Radiant Black is not the only Radiant character in the Radiant
Right,
Black
you were talking
universe.
about Radiant. Yeah, you were like talking about Radiant Orange and
Radiant
Pink
red,
and
pink, yellow,
yeah,
whatever, right? And the thing is,
yeah.
there's very little setting all of them apart, aside from minor variations in their visors. But it is so minuscule that, like, if you were to reprint Radiant Black in black and white, it would completely fail in that regard.
Yeah,
Like,
that's largely my issue, man. I would completely agree with that. It's just like you could do anything with this, and you just like changed the colors. Aside from these like details that are like blink and you'll miss them, you know?
Oh yeah. And this is a larger issue what I have with like Toku-inspired, and this is more like on the Kickstarter side because there have been a few Kickstarters that are like, oh yeah, we're like Sentai inspired, like we're doing our own Power Rangers take, and it's literally just like 5 people with indistinguishable masks. The only difference is that their color are different. And it's like, oh, you've completely foregone and ignored, the one core principle of, like doing a set of costume heroes. So that's the one big thing with the design. And again, a lot of the influence for Radiant Black also comes from Kamen Rider, which has now been commonly associated with power-ups and stuff. And they do have a power-up in Radiant Black, and the power-up in Radiant Black is just a cape that gets added on.
I didn't even see that, man.
And the way they introduce it is so like, because again, in the show, like in these shows, when you have a power-up, it's this sort of big moment, right? Like you usually have an episode dedicated to like them getting this huge power-up, like everyone's getting hype. Like it's supposed to be like them coming back from the brink of, like death even. But in Radiant Black, the power-up kind of just shows up, like, and
Yeah, it's off panel.
yeah, it just shows up, and then he makes some nice quippy remarks about it, but then it's kind of just quickly shunted off to the side as quick as it came. So it's like, okay, you get the aesthetics of this thing, but do you really understand like the how to introduce these things? Like again, going back to pacing, and maybe this is something that, and again, like I mentioned before, is an issue with the comics industry in general, is just like how slow the release is. Like an issue 1 is supposed to be the issue that brings you in as a reader to keep reading this thing. It's supposed to introduce the characters, the core conflicts, who the big villain of the series is, if there is one, and sort of like have them have their big fight. Like if you're comparing this to episode 1 of a series like Ultraman, Kamen Rider, Super Sentai, whatever, right? The pacing usually is introduction to character, introduction to villain, hero finds power, hero uses power, hero fights first monster, and then you're done. But Radiant Black is paced like an American comic. It's paced like an American superhero comic, and it's paced like a modern American superhero comic where this build-up is done across multiple issues. The first issue is pretty much just an introduction to the character. And like it's like I said before, it's not a very relatable character. Even for, because again, I'm not a writer in the same way that this character Nathan, I think Nathan is a writer, but like I don't think many writers can relate to their parents bailing them out $40,000 so you already got this character who isn't very relatable, and then you've got most of the issue sort of being about his conflicts with his own life and not really about the world at large. And so he kind of stumbles on the powers, and has his big hero moment, but his big hero moment is more so just saving people from a runaway train or something rather
Save it.
than.
No, no, he
Is
doesn't
it?
save people.
Oh,
He
he doesn't
no, he
save people.
saves cops.
Oh yeah, he doesn't save people. Yeah, that's right. Those aren't people. Uh, yeah. So it's, as the first issue goes, you're kind of just there, like, okay, is there more? But you're not really going into it like, oh, I want to see more when you're going to that second issue. And the second, third issue is just meandering, like it's just more of, oh, I suck at writing. Oh no, I can't write this novel on time. Like, oh, again, it's very hard to relate to him as a character, um just because of the way it's written. And I think it's either at the end of issue 2 or issue 3 where we get our first sort of big bad, which is Radiant Red. But then Radiant Black decides to do something interesting for once in the 4th issue, which is the big twist, where Radiant Black dies. Or
That's an interesting idea. I'll
and I
hand it up to Higgins
again,
there.
absolutely, I'm gonna hand it off to Higgins for at least like having the balls sort of to do that, but then having the same amount of balls as Toei does with killing off its heroes, where they don't actually kill off their heroes, they sort of just put them out of commission for a while before they come back.
Right, like for all we know, this dude might come back.
Oh, there's
And
no might to it. He has come back since.
yeah, right. And so like that's why it doesn't hit hard enough. Like when you talk about
Like
this big hero,
initially, when that 4th issue hit and I read it, I was like, oh shit, are they actually doing this? They're actually killing off their character and like passing on the mantle to his like his buddy. And I thought that was really fresh at the time because like I had no idea if they're how far they were gonna go with it, like what they were gonna do with it. Like, oh, so was this all just a misdirect? And like now we're gonna get sort of this more classical hero, and not really. It's just more.
yeah, no,
It's just more, but again,
it
it's with a different character. It's slightly
yeah.
more relatable because he's more of a fuck up, and like more of a just.
Yeah, man, it's all pretty underwhelming. I want it to go farther. Like
Mhm.
there's that big hero moment in the first big hero moment. Like you're talking about this kind of there's this structure you should follow, and like it's kind of doing it, but it doesn't seem to be taking a joy in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like the
it's like
train
it's just
segment.
going through the motions.
Right, right. Like that train segment where he lifts the train and saves the cops. Like it's like, wait, that's the cool thing. Like that doesn't, it's not just that I'm in my 30s and that doesn't wow me. That would not have wowed me as a kid.
Oh, it doesn't. I
Like
mean, I'm not in my 30s, and it didn't wow me.
right, so that's what I mean. It's like, say I'm supposed to be the prime audience for this. I'm supposed to be 15 or whatever. Like that 15-year-old me would not have cared. Like and then the Radiant Red, like he's a bank robber. I'm like, I don't give a shit that he's robbing a bank. Like
Yeah,
that's like
the
I don't know. I want this. I want there to be this like, if you're gonna like imitate Toku, then like I don't know, do a weird morality. Like make all these
yeah,
guys like psycho libertarians. That would be
make them
interesting.
schizophrenic. Make them
Right.
do ketamine. Make them do ketamine.
Make them do
Oh
ketamine.
yeah, on the note of Radiant Red, which one thing I found was really funny was there's this big reveal. I think it's in the same issue, issue 4, where it's revealed that Radiant Red isn't a guy, but actually a girl who has the ability to, like change her mask. So she decides to change her mask to look like a guy, and then ever since that point, she no longer decides to do that. She just, wears the suit is drawn as like a feminine body.
We
But I will say, because this is a larger thing about, sort of the whiteness of this thing. issue 6 of the series is a standalone, and I honestly it was the most enjoyable issue of the first 6 issues. I stopped reading around issue 13, but of those 13 issues, issue 6 was definitely the most enjoyable, and it was the one issue that wasn't written by Kyle Higgins. It was written by Cherish Chen. It's pretty much just like an origin story for Radiant Red. And like within that one issue, I was already way more interested in, you know, like her life and her as a character than I was Radiant Black, either of the two Radiant Blacks. And again, that is, and I'm glad that, you know, like Radiant Red has since gotten its own spin-off. But yeah, it's weird because it's like it's playing second fiddle when it honestly should have been the first.
Do you want to get to closing? Thoughts for Radiant Black?
The one big thing I want to end this on is both the gimmicks and, you know, whether or not it actually deserves to call itself Toku-inspired. So the gimmick thing. So Radiant Black is like huge on having gimmicks. So one of the things they did was have their character have a Twitter account. And again, this was a Twitter account in which the character tweeted in character. And you know what? Let me check to see if they're still doing it, because that is a huge gimmick to just keep doing.
Right, yeah, so if this dude is gonna have if this character is gonna have a Twitter account, like that's so ripe to me to make the character in the book like a psycho. That would make it so much more interesting.
Okay, so there's the Twitter, right? And to this day, it does look like they're... Oh no, they've sort of given up on it. It's more... He comes back every now and then. The last time I see the sort of like gimmick at the front is October 3rd, 19th. Again, it comes and goes. So that's one thing. And then they made an account for Radiant Red, and there was a point where they were interacting the two accounts as though, you know, they were in character, which was honestly you know, it went as well as you'd expect. You know, two characters in a real life Twitter, you know, quote tweet battle. You can clearly imagine how that's going. And
yeah.
Have you seen it done well? Tell me this, Salt. Have you ever seen a gimmick character, you know, like a gimmick Twitter account?
Absolutely, I have. I reference it all the time because I'm a big fan. But like, I think On Cinema nailed that, man.
Okay, but I feel like that's different though, because On Cinema is
right. Well, I only want to reference it because like the characters of Tim and Greg are psychos. So when they interact on
that is
Twitter,
performance art
right,
to the highest degree,
right? So
you got to give them,
yeah, like that you can make it work for something like this, but you need much deeper character like development than just like he's kind of a fuck up writer. Like we've been saying, say it with me now. Make him do ketamine.
Ketamine, yes, that's right. Yeah. Ketamine. Whew. Really struggled on that one. So another.
It's all right. We'll blame the lag.
All right, perfect, cool. Another gimmick they did was an animated short, and again, this was something where I'm kind of just wondering how they had the money to do this. Like they got a team to do this animated short, which was a battle between a character, Radiant Black versus Blaze, and I think Blaze is a character from a previous Kyle Higgins comic. So they got Tiger Animation to do this, to do this animation, And it's pretty much just like, like when a rich guy gets, and I'm not saying, this is not like me casting aspersions and saying that Higgins is rich. I don't know what his financial situation is, but this feels like when a rich guy gets, an artist to draw his two OCs fighting, except not on a much higher scale. And they got like Will Friedle to voice Radiant Black. Will Friedle, the guy who voiced Terry McGinnis, if I'm not mistaken, in Batman.
Yeah, that's right. That's why I said wow.
Okay. Yeah,
that's
okay.
Impressive.
And it's funny because they write that into the comic itself. The 15th issue of Radiant Black is sort of like the behind the scenes of this animated short done as this like,
dude, my eyes are rolling in 360s right now.
This is
I
like,
can't tell you why I hate that, but I hate that.
You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of that one issue of Ultimate Spider-Man from like 2002 where Spider-Man meets Tobey Maguire. And that one's a lot more campy and like it's fun just because, like it isn't the character himself, like it's sort of this fake Tobey Maguire and this fake Sam Raimi and whatever. Whereas this is like the real Radiant Black sort of doing this. And yeah, again, it goes as well as you'd expect it to go. The animation's quite nice, I'd say. Which again really does raise more questions as to like how much this cost, and because I mean that is like quite a pricey advertisement for your comic.
Oh, I agree. There's some interesting finances behind this for sure.
And then the last gimmicky thing that I want to talk about was the Blacklight edition of the 10th issue, which is just the 10th issue of the comic, but inked with not glow in the dark, but blacklight ink to make it react to a blacklight. And full disclosure, I did get this issue just to see what it was all about. Also because it was 50% off at my comic shop.
Hell yeah.
So I did get it, and the blacklight's actually pretty cool. The arts, and we haven't really mentioned the art for Radiant Black here because it's no mana. I think is what I can really say. Like it's fine.
What's this guy's name?
He's had a few artists since it started. It started with Marcelo Costa, I believe.
Right.
And
I just want to talk about him. I think the dude he's starting out. I don't want to like discourage someone starting out. I think he's got room to grow.
He's a former colorist turned artist.
Yeah. I think in a few years this dude could be doing something pretty good.
Oh yeah.
I think that's a good like sort of segue, or like that's my last that encapsulates my closing thoughts on Radiant Black. Like I don't
have no other real like again. The Toku-inspired thing is more so just like when you're a white guy writing, an American comic, it's very, very weird to just call your thing Toku-inspired when very few of the people involved are actually like Japanese or even Asians at all.
It's just corny, man. Like
it's just all corny. It is. I think
it's not even offensive.
It's not egregiously bad. It's just very, very corny. I did actually write a bit more on the whiteness thing. And again, this was back when I was doing comics crit.
Your puke sound is great, dude. Like that. Thanks. You're solid at that. Yeah.
Thanks. If we have show notes, I will include that in the link to that show. A link to that.
We absolutely should.
Perfect. Cool. And that's pretty much everything on my take on whiteness regarding this comic. So you can just read that instead of having to see me stumble on something where I don't have show notes properly written.
Yeah, I don't have the power nor do I have the intention to get Higgins and co. to stop making this.
Yeah,
they'll keep making it no matter what. So on the off chance that somebody involved hears this, I just want to say, make this weirder, man. Make this so much weirder.
Go crazier. and
Yeah,
have him
like
say it together now.
do
Have
ketamine.
him do ketamine.
Have
There we
them
go.
do ketamine.
Have
There we
them do
go.
ketamine.
There we
Have
go. We did
everyone
it.
do
We got
ketamine.
it.
All right, let's
All
move
right,
on to
Kamen
the
Rider
final
Black Sun.
to-
Let's
to-
go.
Black Sun, the thing that I've written the most show notes. I got really, really into it. So before we talk about your misadventures with the release of this thing, I think the best way to discuss this, or Black Sun in general, is to do two separate primers. One on Kamen Rider and one on Japanese politics. And you might be wondering, what the fuck? So I'll start with the Japanese politics first. The TLDR of the Japanese politics things, it's fucked. It is absolutely fucked. The state of Japanese politics, beyond fucked. So let's start with Nobusuke Kishi, also known as the monster of the Showa era. So this fuck ruled the Japanese puppet state of Manchuria in China in the 30s, and he was the Minister of Commerce under Hideki Tojo. Some people may know Hideki Tojo as the Prime Minister of Japan during World War II. Kishi co-signed the attack on the states in 1941, which, of course, had its effects, and was later suspected as a Class A war criminal, but was ultimately not charged, tried, or convicted, thanks to a little U.S. post-war influence, we'll say.
What?
Again.
Wait, I thought we beat fascism.
Yeah, I thought the U.S. were the good guys. So anyways, after he was done being suspected of being a war criminal, even though he was a war criminal, wink wink, he helped form the Liberal Democratic Party in 1955. Spoiler alert, the Liberal Democratic Party is not liberal, democratic, and it is very tenuously a party. So the LDP
would be, would be really it'd be really problematic. And I'm just spitballing here. Like, this would be absurd if this actually happened, right? It would be crazy if something like the LDP and its equivalent in Italy at the same time were, I don't know, secretly underwritten and bankrolled by the CIA.
That'd be crazy.
Dude, right, that'd be crazy for the purposes of overthrowing actual grassroots left-wing movements. That would mean that there'd be some disturbing implications there, right?
There's no way the U.S. would have such influence on these people. They're the good guys.
Right, we support democracies, free and fair democracies.
This is the Liberal Democratic Party. So the LDP,
exactly.
The LDP has ruled Japan since 1955, effectively, with two exceptions. One between 1993 and 1996, 2 of those years under Tomichi Murayama and the Socialist Democratic Party, which, spoilers, was actually socialist and was actually democratic. And then between 2009 and 2012, which was under the Democratic Party of Japan. I didn't really do research into the Democratic Party. All I know is that they're defunct. I have no idea if they're actually Democratic. Anyways, Kishi became prime minister in 1957 and resigned disgracefully. Again, I need to assert, disgracefully in 1960. And during this time, he backed many right-wing organizations and cults, one of which was the Unification Church. Do you want to call so the Unification Church also goes by another name called the Moonies. Do you want to keep referring to them as the Moonies, or do you want to keep referring to them as the Unification Church?
I want to call them the Moonies, and can I add something here?
Go for it.
I learned recently that the Moonies have a huge influence in the I'll say procurement of sushi fish and the cultural influence of Taekwondo in the United States.
All I'll say to that is interesting.
Yeah, so basically 90% of the sushi places, your fish was somehow involved with the businessman.
Your fish, your dead fish has dealings with the Unification Church, aka the Moonies. Anyways, the Unification...
Well, I'm just saying they have kind of like a monopoly. That's all I wanted to say. It's just fascinating.
All I'm gonna say is the Unification Church. Keep that name, or specifically the Moonies. Keep either name in the back of your head while we keep going on with this, because they will play a great part into not only the politics thing, but also Black Sun.
Holy shit! That makes this show make so much more sense. Because, dude,
yeah, see,
I
the
was
gears
so
are already starting to
confused
turn.
watching this show.
The gears are already starting to turn. So, anyways, back to
Yes.
Kishi. He is by all means an absolutely horrible person. And yet he still got a peace medal from the UN in 1979. One other thing about Nobusuke Kishi, he's the grandfather of Shinzo Abe.
What? No.
I mean, you know, it's crazy, you know, like family influence, you know.
Well, that would be crazy too.
That'd be
if
crazy.
Kishi, it would be crazy too if Kishi had any involvement with, say, fascist terrorist organizations like Unit 731. Like, and you know, it'd be equally problematic if Abe did not denounce that legacy and was seen photographed flying in one of their planes. I mean, that would be terrible, right?
That would be insane. Thankfully, that is wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Never happened. So the primer on Shinzo Abe is that he's prime minister. He served 3 terms. He upheld many of the same values that his war criminal Gramps had, albeit under a soft, more docile veneer. And his foreign minister during his tenure was Fumio Kishida, who is now the prime minister of Japan. Again, like you mentioned, he's largely spent most of his time denying many of the wrongdoings of Japan and choosing himself to distance himself from a lot of foreign relations, all while expanding Japan's military. And the guy was pretty anti-immigration. Surprise, surprise, yeah. the grandson of the monster of the Showa era, anti-immigration. And his justification for it was that Japan needed to fix its own issues before it could focus on helping others. Anyways,
well, that makes sense.
He got fucking smoked in July of this year. R.I.P. Bozo. By
this is the interactive segment, reader. We need you to take a beer or any other alcoholic drink and pour one out for Abe.
Light one up.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Bozo. So, anyways, he got fucking smoked by Tetsuya Yamagami in July. And Yamagami's reasoning for the assassination was because hear me out here, and I hope you kept this in mind earlier, he suspected ties between the Unification Church, hey, remember those guys, and Abe, and wanted revenge for their, and again, for legal reasons, I have to put this in quotes, brainwashing of his mom. And ever since then, the Unification Church's ties to the LDP has now blown up into a full-blown scandal that continues to plague the LDP to this day, because 179 out of 379 of its lawmakers have admitted to having dealings with the church and its many organizations.
Yeah, you know, man, like Yamagami, I think, shows what's wrong with Western weebs. Like, the problem is not that weebs exist. People think weebs are a problem. No, it's cool. Like, if you want to appropriate respectfully some elements of Japanese culture. The problem is weebs are like Funko collectors rather than like doing what Yamagami did in Minecraft. If you catch my drift.
Yeah, okay. It took me a while to sort of go see where you're going with that, but yes. The issue is that we're not going sorry, for legal reasons, I'm putting this in quotations. Not far enough.
We need better Minecrafting.
We need better Minecraft. So that's all I've got for the Japanese politics primer. Hopefully you
that rocks, dude. Thank you. That helps.
Because now we're going to go into part 2 of the primer, which is the Kamen Rider primer. Because Salt, you don't really have much experience with Kamen Rider at all.
Oh, I got one thing about I got 2 quick things about Kamen Rider that I'm going to say.
For it.
Loved Power Rangers when I was a child, like 5. And I remember there was a crossover episode. And now, if I remember right, they did not call him Kamen Rider. I think his name was Masked.
Yes, Masked Rider.
Yeah.
And they did a whole
And
adaptation series.
I remember thinking his look was sick, and like even as a 5-year-old, I'm like, oh, this is supposed to be a big deal, but like I don't think I ever saw the Masked Rider show. I just like, oh, this guy's
it was
cool. I hope I
okay.
see him again.
All you need to know
Just
about the
being
Masked Rider
5, I'm
show
just
is
saying I
that-
liked his look. That's all I can remember. You know.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. That's
Oh,
all I can say.
And
Yeah.
I have one more thing about Kamen Rider. You know, just Kamen Rider Black Sun. We'll go into this more later. Loved it. Did not understand any of it, but went on Wikipedia to like try to understand more. And I was like looking up the production of the original Kamen Rider. I'm like, okay, like this was going to be based on a manga, and then they kind of like changed in the production. The part that really stuck with me though was that the original Kamen Rider actor on like episode 14 or something gets
10. It was
flung.
episode 10.
Episode 10, you know where I'm going with this. He gets
Mhm.
flung from the motorcycle and breaks both legs instantly.
Yep.
It sounds so funny. They were taking those kinds of wild risks.
For the record, he is okay. Hiroshi Fujioka, the
I'm
actor
glad he won.
the original Kamen Rider, he is okay, guys. He is still, and I really hope that this doesn't, you know, like, because at the beginning of this year, I was making predictions with my friends about what would happen, and I don't know why I said it, but I just like randomly said, "Oh, I don't know, maybe this is the Sidney Poitier dies," and then 6 days later, Sidney Poitier dies.
Oh no, that sucks.
So
you can't do that again.
I'm not going to do that again. All I'm going to say is that Hiroshi Fujioka is doing okay now.
Super, yeah, that's great. I'm glad for him. It's like 10 episodes in. It's like you barely started this show. These stunts are clearly so reckless.
The one thing I'm more surprised about was how quickly they managed to replace him. Like it was just like boom, and he's out.
Yeah. Anyways,
right,
that's all I got to say about Kamen Rider. I don't know anything else about it, so you take it away, man.
Let me tell you about Kamen Rider. Kamen Rider is a 51-year-old tokusatsu series, primarily split into 3 eras: the Showa era, the Heisei era, and the Reiwa era, which corresponds to Japanese calendar eras. Again, which corresponds to the life and death of Japanese emperors.
Right.
It's commonly associated, or Kamen Rider specifically, I should say, is commonly associated with starting the Henshin hero boom. And it started with the subtitle-less Kamen Rider, the eponymous Kamen Rider, I should say, in 1971, which was adapted from Shotaro Ishinomori's comic, or manga, sorry. And the current iteration is Kamen Rider Geats, which is the 4th Reiwa era show and the 33rd season overall. There were 9 seasons in the Showa era, 20 in the Heisei era, and now 4 in the Reiwa era. Now,
wait, shows, not seasons?
Seasons, yes. Seasons.
Oh, seasons. Okay,
it's kind of like how the Brits refer to like seasons as series.
Yeah, it's just like there is for if you're a Kamen Rider virgin like me, there is so much fucking Kamen Rider out there.
Oh yeah, and this is just shows, I should say. There have been like several movies, you know, video games, TV shows. It's the whole like gamut, you know, like theme parks, stage shows, you name it, they got it. So let's do a sub primer, because I feel like this is a pretty good moment to introduce Shotaro Ishinomori, because this will also help inform our Black Sun conversation. Ishinomori was born in 1938. He has been dubbed the king of manga, not the god of manga. That's Osamu Tezuka. And Ishinomori being born in 1938, right before the Second World War. He, of course, lived through that Second World War. He then studied under Osamu Tezuka, and the influence can obviously be seen through his works. And he himself has influenced the works of Naoki Urasawa, Katsuhiro Otomo, among many others. And he holds the Guinness World Record for the most pages of manga produced in a lifetime, which is 128,000 pages. 128,000 pages.
I can't comprehend that, man.
He died in 1998 at the age of 60, exactly 10 months before I was born. I don't know why I had to mention that. I feel like Anyways, other than Kamen Rider, he made Kaider, Cyborg 009, Ganbare Robocon, amongst, a whole bunch of other things. Because again, this guy was fucking busy. So Ishinomori was heavily involved with the Kamen Rider series right up to his death, and the notes his notes helped form the basis for the 2000 Heisei revival of this series, Kamen Rider Kuga. That's pretty much all I got for Ishinomori. Another big thing was that Ishinomori hated war. Surprise, surprise! You live through war, you learn to hate it. So back to the Kamen Rider primer. In 1987, the 8th iteration of the series, Kamen Rider Black, airs. Ishinomori, during this time, he's writing the Kamen Rider Black manga, and he actually cameos in the show, I think twice. Once in the show itself, and then once in a movie. And another thing about the show is that it's actually been licensed by Discotek Media, and they're going to be doing a Blu-ray release. This isn't a plug, but I think you should get it if you're looking to get into because Kamen Rider Black is pretty good.
So, Lan, I got to jump in here. Hold on.
Yes.
I don't know if you explicitly mentioned this or if this is something that I was reading somewhere else. Am I to understand that Kamen Rider Black Sun, the show we're covering, is essentially a remake of a... Okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
Oh, and sorry, the one thing I should say about specifically Showa era Kamen Rider is the shared theme is that it's just a guy who gets kidnapped by some sort of evil organization. He gets turned into the eponymous Kamen Rider, and then he spends the entire series vowing to take down that organization. This happens multiple times, including in Kamen Rider Black. So in 1988, Black gets a sort of sequel in the form of Kamen Rider Black RX, which is what was adapted into Masked Rider, which is what you saw back when you were 5, if I remember correctly. And RX was the last season of Kamen Rider, both in the Showa era and sort of in general, before it went on hiatus between 1989 and 2000. And so in 2021, the 50th anniversary of the series happened. And so Toei got up on a big stage and they announced a global outreach initiative. This is something I'm putting in quotations, not because that's the name of the actual thing, because the outreach has been interesting. And they decided to do 3 international releases over the following 2 or 3 years. The first was Futo PI, which is a sequel anime series to Kamen Rider W. Now, one thing to note about Kamen Rider W, it has not been licensed officially in the States, so you have this licensed, subtitled sequel series, but not the original. The second is Shin Kamen Rider, which is coming in 2023 and is directed by Hideaki Anno, who, you might know him. I don't know. He directed a little thing called Shin Godzilla, Evangelion. You ever heard of these things?
Yeah, I fucking love Shin Godzilla.
And then the last of these global outreach initiatives was Kamen Rider Black Sun. And Black Sun was intended to be a reimagining of Kamen Rider Black, much in the same way that Shin Kamen Rider was a reimagining of the original 1971 series. And again, much like Shin Godzilla and Shin Ultraman were reimaginings of their original things. But this one was not titled Shin. It's just Kamen Rider Black Sun, and it was directed by Kazuya Shiraishi. Shiraishi directed The Blood of the Wolves prior, back in 2018, which apparently was very well lauded, but I haven't seen. And Black Sun is actually his first entry into the Tokusatsu genre. It's actually not and Black Sun isn't actually the first reimagining of a Kamen Rider series, let alone the first reimagining of a Kamen Rider series on Amazon Prime.
Oh, man.
So in 2016, between 2016 to 2017, on Amazon Prime, which you can still find now, Kamen Rider Amazons, or Amazon Riders in some places, was released, and this was a reimagining of the 1974 show Kamen Rider Amazon. This was also another adult-oriented thing, I should say, and it came out to a much different, I guess, not reception, but just it was very different than Black Sun. That's all I'll say.
Yeah,
the other
and like
big one
Amazon writer, he's.
Oh no!
I was just gonna say, an Amazon writer, he's like fighting monsters who are like always trying to like stop him from peeing off the motorcycle.
Yeah, that Amazon's is pretty much a classical sort of Heisei Kamen Rider series, except it's just made with more piss and shit. Whereas Black Sun actually does feel like a Kamen Rider show oriented towards adults. But the other, anyways, back to my point. The other big reimagining prior to Black Sun and Shin Kamen Rider was Kamen Rider The First and the Next, which were both reimaginings of the original show, plus a little bit of Kamen Rider V3. So reimaginings are in the life Kamen Rider series. Get at. And so on October 28th of 2022, all 10 episodes of Black Sun hit Amazon Prime Video in rather maligned release, to say the very least. And this is where I want to segue into into your own experiences, because you have a tale to tell about how you managed to watch Black Sun.
I do, because usually when a show is deemed unwatchable, people call something unwatchable as a criticism or slight of the in-show production. This show was unwatchable for me due to distribution. I really liked the show, and I'll say I haven't actually finished it. I have 2 episodes left of the first season, but I got most of it. But no, it's all good. It's all good. You can give me spoilers. I'm gonna finish it after the pod anyway. Spoilers are fine. But it's crazy because like I hear this show comes out, I go into the search on Amazon, and like nothing is coming up. Like, I mean, it's all the other Kamen Rider stuff, but nothing resembling Black Sun.
All one of them.
Yeah. So Lan sends me a link, and it sort of works. So what happens is I'm able to go through the link, and everything on the page is written in Japanese. And I was like, all right, okay, I'll do this. I clicked play, and it was really weird. Like, I couldn't full screen this thing. There were like the menu was all fucked up, and I also could not get subtitles. So I watched the first episode with no subtitles. I do not speak Japanese. I just took in the visuals like a Labrador.
Nice.
Eventually, I got another link from Reddit, and I followed the directions there where I like plugged it into my browser and then added the show to my watch list. Now, when I did that, it still didn't work on my computer, but it did work on my Chromecast. So,
okay.
Me being me, I watched the second show on my Chromecast with subtitles, and I thought, you know what? I don't need to rewatch that first episode because they're going to catch me up on some stuff I missed. And so I did episodes 2 through 8 with subtitles. Never rewatched that first episode. Never quite understood what the hell was going on here.
I feel like you should have.
I really should have, because I have 100 questions.
Okay. Do you want to start with the questions, or do you want to start with your first impressions? Okay, actually, you know what? I have a question to start off.
Sure.
To you. So, as someone who has little to no familiarity with Kamen Rider outside of that one Masked Rider experience, how did you find this? As in just in terms of how friendly it is to newcomers.
Pretty friendly. Few things that I did not know if were like, you gotta know the property to know this thing, or were just things I missed in the first episode. But regardless, like, overall I loved this show, man.
Oh, yeah.
It
It's
is it
so
is
fucking good.
bonkers. I
It
can't
is
make
so
heads
fucking.
or tails of I can't make heads or tails of what like the politics are. Um,
And
the writing is insane and not good, but I love this show. It's insane. I just keep coming back to that. Like it commits to the bit, and there's a sincerity in it that is missing in like say a Marvel movie or a Marvel show. Like I just want to say like I've pretty much given up on like live action superhero stuff. I was never huge on it, but I kept up with a lot of it. And I'm just like, I never want to watch a live action superhero thing again until I watch this. And it's exciting. You know, it's an exciting
yeah,
show. There's a lot of energy, there's a lot of creativity.
one thing I should mention, because we've mentioned ketamine a couple times during this episode. In the first episode of Kamen Rider Black Sun, released in
There's a lot of
2022, directed
ketamine,
by
that's right.
Kazuya Shiraishi, the main character Kotaro Minami does ketamine multiple times.
Yes.
A lot of ketamine.
A lot of ketamine.
So much ketamine. Okay, so you know what? Let's start with some of your questions. I guess both
Yeah.
in terms of like what you feel like you missed, and I guess everything else beyond that.
Yeah, okay. So, politics, the hygiene out of the way.
Wait,
Um,
I think you're breaking up, or at least slowing down. It's like you entered a time vortex.
Sorry, I stepped too far away from my laptop for a second. I'm really bad at sitting still. You can hear me again?
Yes, I can hear you again. You're back from the
Okay.
vortex.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to get into politics, but kaijin, the whole kaijin thing first. Are okay. So the kaijin are like discriminated against, and we see several. We see at least one character forcibly turned into a kaijin. There is exposition about turning people into kaijin, but
Yes.
my understanding is, are there people also born as kaijin?
I think that is insinuated in the first episode that there are.
Oh,
And yeah, again, maybe if you had sub, just spitballing there.
This is Jeff Bezos's fault, okay, not mine.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, so the
Okay.
kaijin, once you've been turned into a kaijin, you can sort of birth more kaijin.
Yeah, and for people listening, a kaijin, I think they at one point, I tried looking it up. It kind of sounds like kaiju, so I guess is it translate as like monster person? I thought I also read mystery person.
Is strange monster, or strange beast,
Okay.
I should say. So
these are people with
is-
animal heads in the show.
Yeah, so Jin just refers to like being or person. So kaijin is just like strange person. but
Yeah.
yes, like a human-sized monster, whereas kaiju are supposed to be like, larger monsters. Kaijin are just supposed to be like human size.
If you're listening to this, like, watch this show. It's bonkers. But like anyone in the show that's a kaijin, they're almost every single one of them is some kind of animal human hybrid. So like they can have like we see a whale head, or like they're it's like a werewolf, but it's like a were whale or a were bat or a were sparrow. Like there's a lot of interesting stuff going on there. So, my next question is highly specific. Speaking of the sparrow,
okay.
So in this universe, there is like this discrimination against these kaijin, and the sparrow
There's also regular
guy,
racism. I'd say.
Yes, we're going into that very soon, very soon.
Cool.
The sparrow guy at one point, this was an amazing moment. Sparrow walks into the cafe where Aoi, our young lady protagonist, is talking with another friend, and the sparrow guy walks into the cafe to catch up with them. Now the thing in this show is it seems nearly every single kaijin can take on a human form. They can kind of transform at will between the kaijin appearance and the human appearance. So
Yes.
when he walks into the cafe, he is definitely looking like a human, looks like a regular Japanese kid. And as soon as he walks in, the cafe owner says, "Get out of my cafe, you're going to scare my customers. We don't serve kaijin here." He kicks him out. And I was so confused, like, what? Like, how did she know he was a kaijin?
So my answer to that, and maybe this is just playing into the hands of the racists in this show, is that kaijins have a distinct smell to them. And
Okay.
again, this is like mentioned multiple points during the series when like you see those racist protesters is like they mention how
Yeah,
stinky kaijins are. So
right.
maybe there's
Okay.
just a
I mean,
distinct smell to them that
to me, I wrote it as like it kind of seemed
no
like
hate, no
accidentally
discrimination, by the
genius.
way.
Like, yeah, I think
Yeah.
this cafe owner just kind of says that to every fourth person who walks into her shop anyway.
She takes a nice look at them.
She wasn't even certain. Yeah, she just
Yeah.
assumes who's a kaijin. Okay, so my next kaijin question, I truly have so many more, but I'm just going to limit it to one. It's sort of kaijin, sort of politics. Um,
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out what the fuck is going on with the organizations in this show. So this is a
So
really
you mentioned
large
Unit
question.
731, right? You mentioned is it Unit
Yes,
731 in passing as a
they're
joke.
kind of alluded to.
Yes, and again, this is spoilers for the last 2 episodes, but it's less than an illusion, I should say.
Okay. All right. So,
And
wait. Well, go ahead.
so let me just say, spoiler warning from here on out. You should watch this show, but in case you want to, pause this before you actually go and watch, the show, I think you should.
All 10 episodes, then come back
All
and
10
listen to
episodes.
this.
Each episode is like 40 to 50 minutes long. You should go do it. Anyways, yeah, go on.
All right. So, I guess my question is like, what the hell is going on with these orgs? And I want to list these orgs and make sure I understood them. So, I'll say the
Okay.
whole thing, and then you can step in and correct me where I might have fudged it. I might have fudged it. The show just might be that insane. All right. So, my understanding of how the orgs work in this show, up until episode 8 at least, is there's this like really far right group we see at the beginning of episode 1. These are the people who hate the kaijin and are also regular racists.
Right. These are
That's
just
one
regular racists.
organization.
They have no association to like anything really. They're just assholes. They're just C words.
But they really
on a
hate
lot of people.
kaijin.
Yeah.
Okay, so then that's one group. Now there's another group called Gorgom.
Yes, Gorgum.
Okay, so Gorgom is really, really confusing to me. Like, I guess it makes sense more in the show, but if I'm trying to figure out what the sort of real world politics of Gorgom is, it feels like kind of all over the place. It's like it's
we got like a little
it's
bit
like
of the Unification Church there, and we'll get more into that. But you've also got like a bit of the Black Panthers, sort of like
yeah. Okay, so I'm not
activist
that
group in the
crazy.
70s. Yeah, no, you're not crazy.
Okay.
That is absolutely what they were
Yeah.
going for.
So yeah,
These
that's my
grassroots
last question
organizations.
yeah. So the flashback group. Okay, so I'm starting to piece it together. So we see Kotaro, or AKA Black Sun, the main Kamen writer. We see him and Moon Shadow, our other Kamen writer, and some other
Shadow Moon.
characters. Shadow Moon. Yeah, they joined this like kaijin activist group in the 1970s, and they're like radical leftists, and they do some cool shit. Like,
you know what?
have the prime minister's
like
son.
the most blatant thing. It's like it is literally a workers' union. The Gorgum of 1972 is literally a workers' union. And the what's the word? It starts with an S. Sections. Come on, Salt. You got a
Sectarian?
No, not sectarian.
I don't know what you're trying to say.
Intersectional.
Oh, intersectional.
Intersectional. There we go. Intersectional. My brain just fucking. I don't know what happened there. Yes, it's a very intersectional group with, surprise, surprise, black members. There are black members of this party.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So they're like this leftist activist group, kind of Black Panthers, kind of, it's kind of a mix of everything, like, United Workers and all that. But then sometime along the way and in the present day, they morph into this like ultra powerful fascist underground cabal that's like linked to the prime minister. Like, is that what happened?
Yeah, and you get
That
more
doesn't make any
information about
sense.
that. You get more information about that in 2 episodes, but there are like elements in earlier episodes where like the leaders of the group, like Darum, Baron, please don't let me forget the third one.
Bilgenia.
No, not Bilgenia. The Bisham. There we go. Bisham.
Okay.
Where those 3 leaders become like the priests of Gorgum, because they find out this one big thing, and it sort of morphs between the sort of workers' union and this cult that sort of worships this ideology of the creation king.
Yes.
Right. And there is like an instigating moment in the 1970s where that happened. I'm not gonna spoil it. I feel like I think it's best to just let you figure that out while watching.
Yeah. All right. That's fine. I guess I just have. I'll limit myself to one more question, and I think this is kind of a good just sort of way to go over more of what the show is broadly about. And you can do more spoilers here. I'll watch it regardless. I'm having a great time. What the fuck is this show trying to say with its politics, man?
So the thing is, the show's politics are again absolutely informed by Japanese politics. Like the state of Japanese politics is like, again, absolutely fucked. Like racism is still at an all-time high. Like, they don't want immigrant workers. They like their immigration policies and all that, still just absolutely fucked. And there again is that racism, just like blatant racism against minorities in Japan to this day. So when a lot of this is dealing with politics, it's again politics through the lens of Japan's own politics rather than just like a global thing. But, and again, this is partly conjecture on my side, with this being the sort of like global outreach initiative thing. I'm guessing there was more of a push to have political struggles and strikes from other more Western nations be involved in this, and sort of they take some of that iconography. There's one scene in the last episode that is very egregious. I might as well spoil it because I feel like it's worth talking about. There is a scene where cops pin down a Kaijin man, and the imagery is like, it's like very, very similar to George Floyd. What happened with George Floyd, and like the Kaijin even goes as far as to say, "I can't breathe."
Ugh.
And again, I can see what they were going for, but I also don't think that they were nearly as informed about, or at least as nuanced at these things. And again, I think a lot of my issues with the Kaijin allegory, as we'll call it, in Black Sun is also stuff that I can attribute to the mutant metaphor with like X-Men.
It's very X-Men. As someone who doesn't know the Kaijin or Kamen Rider, is getting a lot of X-Men vibes.
Getting a lot of guy who's only seen X-Men. Oh yeah, getting a lot.
Guy who's only seen X-Men.
But I mean, that's what I mean is like when you have an allegory where the allegorical being is a superpowered being representing, a real world minority, you're always going to run into troubles because it's not a
Well, yeah, I
one-to-one map.
mean,
You're never going to be able to map
they
it.
did.
And the
I
thing is,
keep forgetting the character's name, but they did something really similar with the Sparrow. Like, again, you've already got your spoiler warning, people, but like that dude just gets straight up lynched. Like,
oh yeah, it's
do
horrifying.
lynchings happen in Japan? Like, I mean,
Uh,
I don't mean to
mean,
sound like that naive, but like I just I associate that so strongly with like the white supremacist hate crimes, you know?
and again, this is something where this is a blind spot on my end. I'm not sure what the history of lynchings are in Japan, but if that does not exist, then if that is imagery that they're trying to convey to a more Western audience, then yeah.
Yeah. So I want to make another statement about the show's politics, and you tell me if I'm way off base here, because it sounds like there's a lot of important information I didn't get out of the last two episodes. But I guess like there's a lot of criticisms you can make about the sort of clunkiness of the politics. I guess what I find most tiresome in that respect is what I overall got out of the show's political message is the same, mostly the same kind of like hack centrist politics you see in a lot of stories, whether they're, fantastical fiction like this or more grounded stories, which is this takeaway that yes, being a radical has its heart in the right place, but careful or you're going to end up as some sort of fascist supergroup. Is that like kind of what the show is doing?
Because
okay, but that's
you
understand how I got that from episodes
no,
1 through 8?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think the show does a really good job of fighting back against that notion through one specific character, and that specific character's name is Oliver Johnson, one of my favorite characters in this entire series. One of the two black people in the series, I should say. Oliver Johnson's a fantastic character. He is primarily in the 1972 side of the story, and he is both the grounding presence in it all as like the sole human black character too. So like he'll say like, oh yeah, the reason why I fight alongside Kaijin is because I understand or I can sympathize with it because of what I myself have faced. And I think that sort of fights against the notion that Kaijin are, specifically supposed to be a racial allegory. Sort of like this is just another minority group, like there is that sort of intersectionality between minorities, a member of the LGBTQ community, if you're, a racial minority, if you're like even in terms of like ability, like any sort of disability is seen as like as lesser to the government in the show, or an unproductive member of society. There's actually a segment in one of the earlier episodes where like they mention LGBTQ people, elders, people with disabilities, all unproductive members of society that we can turn into kaijin. So like I think what they were trying to go for, and like Oliver Johnson is absolutely the salve to this, is sort of indicating that kaijin, while yes there are many aspects that are taken from real world struggles, this is ultimately just like separate minority struggle that happens in a world where racism, xenophobia, homophobia, all that stuff still exists.
Yeah. I mean, I'll concede that like there's a lot of context I'm missing from those last two episodes. And I actually don't want to keep criticizing the politics because
we should do
there's
a follow. I think we should do a follow.
We will.
Yeah.
Well, because there's so much more we got to get into, but I want to praise some of the politics of the show, namely because I don't watch my shows for like or movies for good or bad politics. I just want them to be interesting.
Yeah.
And this show was interesting to me in lots of ways. But there was some good politics that were like good to me more so because they were interesting. And I really see those moments embodied by Shadow Moon.
Shadow Moon, yeah.
Yeah, Shadow Moon has two really standout moments to me. There's this moment where I'm sorry, I'm fuzzy on the details here, but he shows up at this rally where like the tensions are high between the kaijins and the racists, and like things are escalating, and like the racists are trying to like egg the cops to like make it like get nuts. And you see this sort of like expression from the two sides, with people within the sides like not knowing how to advance, like what they should would be the best thing to do. And
Right.
then Shadow Moon shows up and it's like, oh shit, what's he gonna do? Now I've seen so many types of movies where like when Shadow Moon shows up, he's gonna say something that's like, all right, your concerns are valid, but we need to get along.
Come on, guys, we gotta get along.
He doesn't do that. He says you need to get way more fucking angry, and that rocked.
Oh yeah, Shadow Moon. It's so refreshing to see a character who is just so unrepentantly, like so just like there is zero, pullback. He's not pulling any single punches. Like he's like.
Speaking of which, he
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Tell him.
Oh yeah, dude. Like he does not pull punches when he takes that like head racist guy's head and he claps it like a water balloon. Oh, that was so cool.
Such a beautiful moment, and it's like this is so again spoilers as if we haven't said it enough. This comes after the Sparrow boy dies, Shinsuke dies, and as we see earlier in the movie or earlier in the series, because again, context is that Kotaro and Nobuhiko, Shadow Moon, and Black Sun both start as kaijins, but they eventually transform or are triggered to transform into their Kamen Rider selves by like this, snap moment. For Kotaro, the snap moment is seeing Aoi turned into a kaijin, but for Shadow Moon, his snap moment is seeing Shinsuke's death. Like seeing the aftermath of that, and having that be the moment where he snaps, turns into Kamen Rider Shadow Moon, and pops the racist guy's head off. Perfect. No notes.
Oh, it's beautiful. Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's great writing. Like it's great writing. Really, it juxtaposes these characters are.
It juxtaposes him with Kotaro as well, because when Kotaro turns into Black Sun, like it's a sort of like classical hero stuff, like where he's going into this huge fight, like he's really showing off, he's being a hero, whereas with Shadow Moon, he's like, no time for hero. I need to pop some fucking heads. And he goes right into it. It is so cool. So beautiful. And it's, I mean, again, the way they build up to it is also just perfect. Just because, like there's also the mirror reflection between Shadow Moon and Shunsuke, because Shunsuke is sort of like similarly radicalized like Shadow Moon is when he was younger in 1972, and sort of like seeing that sort of mirror and then seeing what happens to Shunsuke and then having that reflect back upon Nobuhiko. Again, beautiful. Just everything they do there, like the narrative beats here are done so well. So well. And it's so unrepentantly, again, it's so face front about its politics too, which is why I want to bring up the Ishinomori of it all. This is like the most Ishinomori that the series has gotten since Ishinomori was running the franchise, Like in the first Kamen Rider series, and the manga too by extension, Takeshi Hongo's turn into Kamen Rider, and the first thing he does, he isn't like happy that he got his powers. He's like genuinely horrified. He's like, "Oh God, what does this mean for my humanity? Like, am I still a human? Like, what does this mean for who I am or what I do? Like, what has happened to me?" And he sort of carries this horror onto, like everything he does onwards. and again, the politics of Ishinomori's works are all informed by his own experiences as a kid in post-war Japan. You know, like he's seen the horrors of war, he knows how bad it can get, and it like bleeds into his work. And I think the same can be said about Black Sun. You know, like the politics of Japan, seeing everything that Japan has been through over the past 50 years alone, and having that bleed into the work, I think is something that you're not going to see out of even like regular Kamen Rider shows. You know, obviously, Kamen Rider is a show made for like, kids, but you know, there are certain seasons that people praise as being like super good with the politics, or like super not prescient, but cognizant about politics, like Kamen Rider Build, which is I will say right now, Kamen Rider Build is not very good. And again, the regular show won't do this because at the core, it's a kids' TV show meant to sell toys, right? So you can talk about like war for like two episodes, but obviously you have to go back and sell the toys. They're gonna be like, oh no, this isn't the folly of man causing war. It's actually the space alien that came along and influenced everyone to do war.
Right.
Again.
Yeah, well, as we know, the aliens are drawn towards your bad vibes.
Yeah, the bad vibes. Oh shit, I didn't mention that during the ride. I noted this down. I actually noted this down when I was reading it. Was the whole aliens are coming here because of
your
humanity's
vibes
bad
are
vibes.
Your vibes are bad, dude.
Yeah, your vibes are bad. We're coming over. Your vibes fucking suck. Yeah, none of that in Black Sun. You know, the folly of man is the folly of man. Any human horror or any Kaijin horror even is directly responsible, or humanity is directly responsible for these horrors, which again you'll see more of in the last two episodes.
Yeah, like I mean, even though I felt confused by the politics before I spoke to you, like one thing that kept me watching was like, oh shit, they're talking about Unit 731. Like from watching enough like anime and stories that deal with Japanese culture, like I know that doesn't come up very much. So even them alluding to it was so fascinating as a viewer who has a small understanding of Japanese politics.
Yeah, I mean, like the comparisons between the prime minister in Black Sun and Shinzo Abe are like so 1-to-1 almost. It's like 1-to-1.1. You know, down to like, and again, this is a slight spoiler, the grandfather of it all, like how
right, they talk about that.
Yeah, they do, right? It is so like I'm honestly in shock at the fact that this show even exists, like how the show is even allowed to exist. You know, like it really feels like the kind of show where, you know, producers or editors would have come in like halfway through and
absolutely,
you know, like shaved off all the cool stuff, but yeah.
No, the cool stuff is in there.
Yeah, I know. It's messy. It's in there. You know, like it's not perfect, but you know, it's the most unapologetic that Kamen Rider as a series has been in pretty much, you know, like 50 years.
You know, I think I should throw this out there. There's this show really excites me. I've really enjoyed watching it, and I'm starting to pick up what you're putting down about the importance of the last two episodes. I want to go watch those episodes and do a follow-up episode with you because I think we can scratch even more stuff. And you know, even if I had watched them, we're getting a little on the longer side here, so it makes sense to do it this way.
We'll put a pin in.
I just want to say one more thing. In the 8th episode, there's a visual that stuck with me. That's another piece of high praise I have with this show. Is it's so not like the American superhero stuff where you kind of expect to see certain things. There's just so many weird, like intentional images that stick with you, and that's partly because the craftsmanship of the costumes is so high quality in what it's trying to achieve. And that visual in the 8th episode is when Kujira,
Mouth?
the whale kaijin,
Oh, the whale. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he's supposed to take Black Sun somewhere. It's not
His
explicitly
cave.
said.
It's his.
Okay, to his
Oh
cave,
shit!
and
Sorry.
to take him. It's all good. It's fine.
Okay. Yeah.
He to take him there. He's like waving goodbye to another kaijin who's standing on the shore.
Yeah, the white
Kujira
guy.
is standing. Kujira is like standing in the low tide. He's holding Black Sun and Black Sun's severed leg.
raft.
He's holding
Like a
both
raft.
of these. Yeah, yeah. And then Kujira, in his like whale form, like slowly descends under the water, and it's all practical. Him holding
Yeah.
severed
Yeah.
leg and Black
Everything.
Sun and severed. So and it's
Actually,
and he
one
holds
other
this
thing.
shot for so long. It's
It
so
like
weird and so cool, man.
one other thing I really want to commend is the
Yeah.
Creation King prop. The
Mm-hmm.
Creation King prop in this
Fucking
show is
cool.
fucking crazy. It's like this
And it's
10
even
foot high.
crazy.
It's a real prop. It's not CGI either.
Yeah. Right.
And
And when Black Sun is tearing him apart, it's just like, oh my god,
oh,
amazing.
oh my god. It's again, I want to commend like the team in general, not only Kazuya Shiraishi, but the rest of the team. You mentioned Shin Ultraman and Shin Godzilla. The VFX guy on this show, Shinji Higuchi, is the director of Shin Godzilla and Shin Ultraman, or co-director of Shin Godzilla. He's the director of Shin Ultraman. And if we do a Shin Ultraman episode, I have some very very funny anecdotes about my 2 minutes of being in the same room with him.
Oh, sick. Okay, well, that is the perfect point to push this pin in all the way and get to our closing thoughts. We will come back to Kamen Rider Black Sun after I get to do the last 2 episodes. So that's going to be our Toku Tuesday part 2. And there's a couple other things we'll go into. I really want to talk about Taro Man and Lan's involvement.
Yes,
That'll
I have
be,
no notes on this. I'm
really cool.
going shooting straight from the hip. We can do another question and answer thing, or
no, we'll do. I'll give you time to prepare between now and the next recording because there's a lot to talk about there, and I want you to feel prepared. And then we will do. So we'll cover the rest of Kamen Rider Black Sun. We'll talk about Taro Man, and then this is a feature I really want to do. We'll do more Toku Tuesdays, and we want to talk about Shin Ultraman. I'm a big Godzilla fan, so there's a lot of Godzilla stuff I want to talk about. I really want to do Ultra Q, the predecessor to Ultraman.
Yeah,
and I want to do some Tokusatsu stuff that's not so franchise centric as well. Because a lot of I just watched I think it was called 100 Yokai.
Yes.
It was a 1960s horror film, and it fucking rocked. So basically, there's so much cool Toku stuff that we can go into, and I hope people like listening to that because we clearly enjoy talking about it.
Yeah, we can make this a recurring segment, if you will. As for
and
I have no idea.
Sorry, say that again.
So as for what happens next episode, I have no idea. We're still flying by the seat of our pants.
Yeah, next episode will probably be part 2 or Toku Tuesday 1 part 2, however you want to call it that. And then
pour into my 7-hour tirade into whatever. We'll see.
No, we will definitely do we'll do other things as well. And just to keep zooming out, we'll do some other segments. I want to go into some other shows and comics that can be recurring things.
Fewer questions.
Fewer
questions from all 5 of our listeners.
Yeah, questions like, Lan, what happened to that recording?
And my answer to that is, fuck you. I have no regrets.
There we go. No regrets.
No regrets.
Yeah, Lan, make sure you mentioned something to put in the show notes. I don't recall what that was. I think it was a piece of writing you did.
Oh yeah, I'll just
yeah.
like give you all my notes and we can figure that stuff out. Might even make a website for this shit. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see when
There we
we
go.
get there. And yeah, I hope this wasn't as much of a mess as the last one. Again, I have no regrets about the last episode. I don't even, just to reiterate, I have no regrets about the episode, but yeah.
No, we covered a lot, man. This
Yeah.
is good. This is exactly what I wanted. This is exciting. I'm definitely excited to conclude the next part with this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah, if there are any other thoughts that we missed out, we'll just add in the show notes.
Sick. All right, you know what we got to do next time? We got to come up with like a proper sign off.
We do. Until then, do we just like cut it off? Like we're just...
Yeah, I mean, like I do a lot of like Irish goodbyes at parties. Like I do not tell my friends
this is
Irish goodbye. I mean, it's got a lot of names. It's like the joke is that there's the Irish goodbye, where like you leave without telling anybody, and then there's like another race, and I'll say Italian, if I can say that because I'm also Italian. And the Italian goodbye would be like you say goodbye to everybody without leaving.
Right. That's also known as the South Asian goodbye, where you say goodbye to everybody, and then you stay there for a bit longer, and then you say goodbye to everyone again, and you stay a bit longer, and then you go outside, you take a couple pictures, and you're like, okay, maybe this time we go.
Right, that's what we're doing right now, basically.
Yeah.
All right, dude. Well, this was fun. Thank you for joining me, Lan. Thank you for bringing so much expertise. I learned a lot.
I'm glad to be your guide into this foreign land, and I hope I was a competent enough guide to the people watching this, regardless of how experienced they are with Toku. I hope that anyone that actually is familiar with Toku wasn't completely annoyed by by my explanations or how much I skimmed over. But yeah.
Well, and that's why we're going to do it again, because there's so much to cover. I'm really looking forward to that. All right, Lan. Thanks again, buddy. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right.
And readers, thank you for listening.
Thank you again for sticking this long. Peace.